American women share their most craziest confessions. Story 1. This spicy little story is going somewhere. Stay with me. It all began with a power move I wasn't afraid to make. I told him, when I like someone, I'm all in, no holding back. They get the full hand and mouth combo. We'd been dating for a while. He was the one who brought up being exclusive, and I was excited about it. The chemistry was strong, the flirtation had escalated, and I was in that giddy, buy new lingerie immediately kind of mood. I genuinely thought the feelings were mutual, until a friend reached out. She'd seen us together and let me know he had messaged her on a dating app 2 days ago and even sent a nude. I didn't freak out. I asked him calmly, "Are you sure about this exclusivity thing?" "Because I am." He looked me in the eyes, "Without a doubt." I slept on it. The next day I texted him, "Remember what I said about how I act when I really like a guy? Still coming over tonight?" He did come over, and I had a plan. I showed him the gorgeous lingerie I'd bought, lingerie I had no intention of wearing for him. I teased it. I hinted. I chose a soft pink set that made me feel powerful. What followed was unforgettable. Let's just say I gave him everything he thought he wanted. I made sure he knew how much I'd been thinking about him, made him feel like he was the center of my world for one night. The words he said? Let's just say he was hooked. He thought I was all his. Then, when he was catching his breath, I handed him a tissue and said, "I bumped into Haley. She mentioned your photos were quite something." I looked him in the eyes and added, "I only go all in when I really like someone. Maybe I didn't like you quite as much as I thought." He stood there, stunned, asking for a second round. I gave him a sweet smile, shook my head, and closed the door. That was the last time he saw me in that lingerie. Story 2. So, this story's been a long time coming, literally and metaphorically. I'd known her for years. She was my sister's best friend, 5 years younger. We always had this unspoken tension, those sneaky glances, the way her voice shifted when we talked. If you know, you know. She was 21 now, and I was 26. Grown. We'd bumped into each other at the bar a few times, and it wasn't hard to tell that the energy had shifted. She started texting me out of nowhere, casual at first. "What are you up to?" and all that. But then came the message that changed the game completely. "I need some attention," smirking face. I smirked. I knew exactly what she meant. "Oh yeah," I replied. "What time?" "Tomorrow, your lunch break?" I let her know my place would be empty, and she sent me a single emoji that said everything. The next day, I messaged her before lunch. "Still coming over? I could use a little dessert." "I'll be there," she said. And she was. 5 minutes late, Jeep pulling up, smile brighter than the sun, and a dress that left nothing to the imagination. "Hey you," she said, walking up like a scene from a movie. "How you doing, cutie?" I asked. She kissed me. "I'm good. Ready for you." Let's just say we didn't waste time. I took her hand and led her to my room. The energy between us? Electric. Her dress hit the floor, and all I could say was, "Wow." She knew exactly what she was doing. She took control, confident, teasing. Then she let me take the lead. The chemistry was insane. Every move, every sound, every look, we were completely in tune. And when things really heated up, she whispered the kind of line that echoes in your head long after. "You don't need a raincoat. Just don't miss the landing." I'll leave the rest to your imagination, but let's just say that lunch break went way over schedule. By the time we were done, I was late getting back to work, feeling like I'd just run a marathon. She got dressed, gave me one of those sly, post-trouble grins, and said, "Thanks. I needed that. Let's do it again sometime." I kissed her and said, "Just don't get us caught." She winked. No promises. And just like that, she was gone. But I knew that wouldn't be the last time. Story 3. I'd stayed over at my best friend's place after a party. Her dad had barely said 2 words to me, just kind of kept to himself. But that morning, she stepped out to grab lunch, and I offered to help with the laundry. It felt like the polite thing to do. I remember bending to pick up her bed sheets, and the next thing I knew, he'd come into the room behind me. I could feel his eyes on me before I even turned around. "Are you always this helpful?" he asked, his voice low. I laughed it off, but I wasn't totally relaxed. My skin felt hot, like I couldn't tell if I was blushing or just imagining things. Spoiler, I wasn't imagining anything. He stepped closer. Too close. He said something about how grown I looked. My hands started to tremble, but I didn't move away. I let the moment hang there. Then he touched my hip. That's when the energy in the room shifted completely. It was like we were both holding our breath. I ended up perched on the edge of the dryer, heart pounding, trying to stay quiet, especially because the neighbor's window was right there. The hum of the machine under me, the scent of fresh detergent in the air, and that moment burned into my memory. It was fast, intense, surreal. I don't think I said a word. I hated walking out of that room, but the truth? I haven't stopped thinking about it. My body still remembers. And I still have the bruises to prove it. Story 4. Sorry if this feels like a slow burn, but the story unfolded over 3 years, and I really wanted to show how the tension built over time. If you stick with it, I think you'll feel it too. Year 3 started in silence. Alexandra was in my class again, same course, same lecture hall, but it was like I'd disappeared from her radar. No teasing, no smirks, no lingering glances or quiet moments at the end of class. She sat in the middle rows now, took clean, quiet notes, spoke only when she had to, and left the moment the lecture ended. I should have felt at ease. I told myself this was healthier, but if I'm being honest, something felt off, like a piece of the rhythm had been cut out. I'd see her around campus with a guy, always the same one, hoodie, headphones, that kind of detached confidence. They sat close, sometimes too close. I assumed he was her boyfriend, and for a while, I figured that was it. Maybe the tension we had wasn't real. Maybe it had just lived in my head. Until spring. She came to my office one afternoon. Barely knocked, just a soft tap, and stepped in hesitantly. Hey, do you have a minute? She looked tired. No makeup, hair tucked back. She held a folder like it was heavier than it should have been. Sure, I said. Come in. She sat down and placed a short proposal on my desk. I skimmed it. The idea had potential, but it wasn't really in my wheelhouse. This is interesting, I said, but it's outside my focus. I don't think I'm the best advisor. I know, she interrupted a little too fast. Then softer. Yeah, I know. I just didn't really know who else to ask. She glanced down at her hands, fidgeting with the folder's edge. Everyone else is already matched. Or they're too busy. Or they don't really care. A faint shrug. Still no eye contact. I guess I was just hoping maybe you'd be okay with it. I stayed quiet. She added, voice cracking just slightly. You were always kind, even when I wasn't exactly easy to deal with. That stayed with me. Her eyes shimmered for a moment, and she blinked quickly. I don't even know if this topic makes sense, but I thought, maybe you'd help me figure it out. She finally looked up, completely unguarded for the first time in years. If it's a no, I get it. Really. This wasn't a performance. She wasn't trying to be clever. She just looked tired. Sincere. I should have said no. Instead, I nodded. Okay, let's do it. She let out a breath, less relief, more release. Thank you. And that was that. She was late to our first supervision session. No apology. Just walked in calmly, dropped her bag next to her chair, crossed her legs with practiced ease, and gave me a smile that said more than words ever could. I didn't react. Let's start with your outline, I said, pulling up her file. She tilted her head, then paused. Before we do that, can I say one thing? I looked up. She met my gaze, steady, calm, direct. I know I get to you. Just like that. No build-up. No hesitation. The room went still. Alexandra. She didn't flinch. This can't happen. Silence. And not just because it's wrong. I'm in a serious relationship. And you're still my student. Still no reaction. Just that same quiet, unreadable look. Even if neither of those things were true, I added, you're here for help. You asked for guidance. So let's keep it about that. A second passed. Then she nodded slowly. Okay. No drama. No argument. Just a quiet, almost knowing acceptance. But something in her eyes said this wasn't the end. Just a pause. We worked through her outline. I gave feedback. She asked a few good questions. Then she left. And I sat there, wondering just how close that line had come to breaking. 2 weeks after the term ended, I had almost settled back into normal. Then a notification popped up. Follow request, Alexandra. Attached, a screenshot of her university transfer confirmation. One line beneath it. Guess I'm officially not your student anymore. Story 5. My wife Jessie and I were on the couch the other night. Lights low, the soft hum of music in the background, and a glass of whiskey warming my chest. Then my phone buzzed with a message from Zach. You know Zach, the older guy, friend of Jessie's brother. He's been a little obsessed since that accidental picture of Jessie during one of our live streams. That night, he'd totally lost it. Couldn't stop messaging. Couldn't stop watching. This time, the message simply read, Z, I need more of Jessie. Please. I showed it to Jessie. Her eyes lit up. She loved the attention. She always had fun knowing how much power she had just by existing in someone's fantasy. So we decided to play a little game. If Zach wanted more, he was going to have to earn it. I typed back, begged for it. Prove you're worth it. And oh, he did. The messages came pouring in. Desperate, breathless, over the top. He confessed things even I didn't expect. Said he couldn't stop thinking about her, even during moments he probably shouldn't admit. We let him stew for a while. Jessie curled up next to me, teasing me with her fingers, both of us sipping our drinks, enjoying the control. The next night, I texted him again. Come over. The stage was set. Candles flickered against the walls, shadows dancing across the room. The scent of bourbon in the air. Zach arrived a little nervous, shifting awkwardly as he stepped into the dim light. His eyes landed on Jessie, corset top, silky shorts, her legs crossed just so. She barely acknowledged him. That was part of the fun. We didn't rush. I poured drinks slowly, letting the silence build. Jessie stretched on the couch, her movements deliberate. Her shorts rode up, revealing just enough to make Zach squirm in his seat. Her top clung to her just right, every breath making it rise and fall. He couldn't take his eyes off her. Jessie stood, calm, controlled. She let the silk shorts slide down her legs. Then, slowly, she unzipped her top, letting it fall open. She circled him like a cat, her presence magnetic. I watched him struggle to stay composed. This wasn't just about lust, it was about surrender. I gave Jessie a nod. She sat beside him, her thigh brushing his, her fingers tracing just above his knee. He gasped. Tension surged through him. He was completely fixated on her. She leaned in close, whispering something I couldn't quite hear, and I saw his hands tremble. Then came the moment. Quiet, intense, and charged with something heavy. Jessie leaned back, her fingers moving with measured precision. Zach's breath hitched, his body tensed, and then release. Quiet, sudden, overwhelming. His face was a mix of awe, shame, and something he couldn't quite name. Jessie looked at her hand, then at him. She smiled, wiped it on his shirt, and laughed softly. And just like that, the moment was over. Story 6. A few years back, I posted a casual Craigslist ad offering sensual massages. Honestly, I didn't expect much from it, but one reply stood out. She was 27, tall, with fiery red hair and piercing green eyes. Her message was confident, curious, and had a spark that caught my attention immediately. We arranged the session at her place, a stylish loft in uptown Minneapolis. When I arrived, she opened the door wearing a black silk nightgown, already holding a glass of wine. The lights were low, candles flickered, and some soft, melancholic Americana music played in the background. The whole space felt intentional. She was relaxed, almost too relaxed, and definitely eager. As we moved into the bedroom, she slipped out of her gown without hesitation, climbed onto the bed, and laid down on her stomach. I started at her shoulders, working slowly, letting my hands explore the tension in her muscles. She let out a soft sigh, melting into the mattress. As I moved down her back and over her legs, I could feel the shift in her breathing, deeper, heavier, more responsive. Eventually, I asked her to turn over. I moved my hands carefully across her chest and down her sides. Then, without a word, she reached toward me with a look that made it clear she wanted to be more than just a client that night. I paused for a moment, then nodded. Her touch was slow and deliberate. I could feel the warmth of her skin, the way her energy shifted, focused, curious, and hungry. She whispered something about wanting to explore more, and I let her take the lead, watching her reactions as I gently traced across her body. She was trembling by the time I leaned in again, breathy and flushed. The room was thick with heat, the scent of massage oil in the air. She gasped and clenched the sheets, and I knew she'd just hit a high she hadn't expected. After a quiet moment, she rolled over and looked up at me. "Can we keep going?" she asked softly. "But this time skin to skin. I want to feel everything." She laid back down, and I positioned myself behind her. The contact between us was electric. Every movement was slow but intentional, like our bodies were having a conversation all on their own. She shifted slightly, inviting more connection, and I matched her rhythm. With each motion, the gap between massage and something much more intimate faded. Our breathing synced. Her body moved under my hands like it had been waiting for this. And then there was no more guessing. She took the lead again, guiding us into something unmistakably real. She gasped, arched, and whispered my name. Her whole body tensed, then released. I held her close. She collapsed into the sheets, breathless, glowing. I stayed there for a long time, brushing her hair back from her face. And yeah, best massage ever. Story 7. It was late. We were curled up on the couch, 2 drinks in, lights low. My legs were draped over his lap, just like always. Just us. Best friends. Watching movies we probably shouldn't. That night it was something by Gaspar Noé. One of those films that doesn't blink. Brutally honest. Quietly confrontational. We didn't make it to the credits. Because then that scene happened. A moment between 2 people. Intimate. Bare. A woman's hand, slow and deliberate, exploring her partner with care and curiosity. The camera didn't cut, it lingered. On breath. On reaction. On connection. I stopped breathing too. His hand was resting on my shin. It hadn't moved. But I felt it differently now, like every nerve under it had sparked awake. When the scene passed, I picked up the remote and paused it. The screen froze on that moment, her hand mid-motion, his body quiet but alive. I turned to him. Is it really like that? I asked softly. He blinked, then glanced at the screen. You mean the way it looks? Or the way it feels? Both. We sat in that question for a moment. And then he said, almost cautiously, I could show you. If you want. My breath caught. But I didn't look away. I want, I replied. He studied me like he needed to be sure. We don't have to do anything, he said. You can just watch. Or touch. If you're curious. I was. So curious. But more than that, I trusted him. We moved to the bed without words. The air was different now. Not heavy. Not awkward. Just quiet. Focused. He sat at the edge, looked up one last time, then unzipped his jeans. I stood in front of him, my heart pounding. Not from fear, but from wonder. I'd seen men like this before. But not like this. Not in this light. Not this close. Not him. He waited. I stepped closer. And I reached out. My hand hovered first, uncertain, then made contact. Warmth. Pulse. Tension. He felt real in a way I hadn't expected. Like something sacred had been placed in my hands. He inhaled, slow and sharp, but didn't move. He let me explore. Let me learn. I moved with care. Tracing. Testing. Feeling his reactions through every breath, every gentle shift. His face was soft, eyes closed. His mouth slightly parted. I did it again. This time slower, more deliberate. I watched how his body responded, the way his breath caught, how his stomach fluttered. It made me feel powerful, but also tender. I asked, is this okay? His eyes opened, glassy, overwhelmed. This is perfect, he whispered. I kept going, letting instinct guide me. My hands found rhythm. My touch, confidence. He shifted slightly, not to push forward, just to meet me there. In the moment, I whispered, you're beautiful. His body reacted before he could speak. I'm close, he warned, voice cracking. I didn't stop. I simply adjusted. Slower. Focused. Intentional. Every small reaction felt like a melody I was learning in real time. I want to see, I said. Let me witness it. And then, he let go. It started with a gasp, like everything he'd been holding in had finally been released. His body arched, muscles tight, and then a wave of release moved through him. Quiet. Raw. Powerful. I stayed with him through it. Holding. Soothing. Letting him unravel. He opened his eyes and looked at me like I'd just shown him something he hadn't known he needed. I've never, he started, voice soft. That was different. I smiled, brushing my fingers along his arm. You let me learn you, I whispered. And you're beautiful when you let go. Story 8. They handed me a glass of Chardonnay and told me to make myself comfortable. The men were in their usual athleisure, polished but casual. None of them bothered to take off their wedding rings. In this room, secrecy wasn't the currency, complicity was. Everyone knew each other's stories. Or at least, the parts they were willing to share. In a strange way, I thought it was almost progressive. A collective of discreet, well-groomed men, bound by a shared hunger they never admitted out loud. They didn't call themselves anything. Not gay, not bi. Just a group of men with an agreement. An appetite. The country club daddies, as I call them in my head, had taken a liking to me. And this past weekend, they invited me back. Most of the faces were familiar, subtle tans, varying shades of gray at the temples, and a strict loyalty to some version of blue. It was almost like they had a dress code. A hive mind. A curated uniform for indulgence. I'm getting ahead of myself. They waited longer this time. I made my rounds in a dress cheaper looking than the last one. It hugged my hips, clung to my thighs, and showed off just enough to make a point. I even added glittery makeup, cheap, shiny, and definitely not long wear. They liked when it smeared. They liked knowing I was there to be looked at. Being in that room was like being a paper cup among fine china. Disposable by design. But that's the trick. If you know you're meant to be discarded, you can turn it into power. You can become the thing they crave and can't keep. There were chips in my nail polish. I knew they liked that too. Perfectly imperfect. I didn't see the first one. Just felt him. Hands on my hips as I leaned against the antique writing desk. No words, just presence. Dominant, unspoken. His grip was firm, almost reverent, and the flash of a wedding ring in the corner of my eye made the moment feel even more surreal. I was pulled, pushed, and positioned. The desk creaked under us. I remember freckles on the back of his hand. The kind that only come from years of golfing without sunblock. There was no choreography, just instinct. Another glass clinked nearby, someone coughed, someone else adjusted the music. But I was elsewhere, carried by the rhythm of something primal. I tried to stand, but someone caught me, held me. Their body was warm against mine, steadying me. Hands slid down my back and gathered my dress in a fist. The room didn't pause, it shifted. I was guided toward the round table near the fireplace, half covered in glasses of scotch and boxes of imported cigars. I was lifted onto it. Cold wood. Dim light. All eyes on me. A younger man joined me first, early 30s maybe. Paler than the others. But just as bold. He moved with certainty, not arrogance. He looked at me like I was a secret he'd been waiting to unwrap. He leaned in close. Spoke low. I barely caught the words. My body moved with his. My own breath caught in my throat. He wiped at my cheek, smearing my glitter makeup with 2 fingers. I gasped. The room blurred. Everything felt heightened, like the volume had been turned down, but the intensity turned all the way up. He stayed with me through the wave. Held me while I shook. Looked at me like I was something rare, just for a second. I almost sat up, but hands pinned me down, firm, unrelenting. My wrists. My ankles. The table beneath me felt more like a stage now. Or maybe an altar. Someone climbed over me. Others watched, their silence heavy. I felt hands again. Guiding. Parting. Holding me in place. Time got strange. Movements blurred into one another. I was carried from moment to moment, not fully sure who was behind each touch. I stopped counting. It didn't matter. What mattered was how the room wrapped itself around me. How I was seen. Desired. Consumed. My limbs were free again, only to be repositioned. I was pulled on top of someone, his breath against my shoulder, his grip on my waist. Another pressed behind me, using what was already there to glide in smoothly. The pressure. The pace. The way they moved in sync without speaking, it was overwhelming. I came again. And again. My body didn't feel like mine, it felt like theirs. And I loved that. When it was over, I was left there, still glowing, stretched out on the table. My skin slick with sweat and fingerprints. My hair tangled. Lipstick gone. Glitter smudged across my cheekbones. They poured themselves new drinks. Talked amongst themselves. Laughed, shared stories. I was the centerpiece. And I didn't mind. Story 9. Over the weekend, I stayed with my girlfriend's family. They've got a pool, and while they usually use it pretty casually, the heat had most of us hanging out indoors. Still, we managed to get in some swim time, just enough to break up the long, slow afternoons. Now, here's where things got a little weird for me. Her younger sister and I have been getting along more lately. Nothing inappropriate, just more relaxed. We've been joking around, and maybe some of my humor's been a bit edgier than usual. Surprisingly, she laughs. A lot. And that always throws me a little. So, the day we all got in the pool, she came out in a bikini that left very little to the imagination. I won't get into details, but let's just say she carried herself with confidence. She knew how she looked, and it was clear she was comfortable in her skin. I tried not to stare. Really, I did. But any time she'd lounge near the edge of the pool, or casually stretch out on a chair. Yeah, I noticed. It was hard not to, especially when she sat a certain way, all relaxed, like she didn't have a care in the world. At one point, her sister told her to go change into regular clothes, and she looked right at me and joked, "What should I just change here?" It was teasing, playful, and she left the room with a smirk before giving anyone time to respond. I stood there, stuck in the moment. Nothing happened, and nothing ever will. I know that. I'm with someone I care about, and the sister is younger, with her own world to figure out. But still, There's something about when someone unexpected gets comfortable around you. When they stop filtering themselves, it messes with your head. I've caught myself thinking about it more than I probably should. Not because I expect anything to happen, just because it lingers. That feeling of being noticed, or maybe imagining that you are. It's one of those things you keep to yourself. That quiet tension that sits just under the surface of a normal afternoon. And maybe that's all it'll ever be. Story 10. When my girlfriend Steph, 29, was in college, she lived in a split-level house that was divided into 2 units. She shared the downstairs with 3 other girls, and upstairs were 3 guys, same age, same energy. Once the school year began, they all got close quickly, and Steph started spending a lot of time with the guys upstairs. Eventually, she began dating one of them, let's call him Ryan. One night, Ryan admitted something to her. Apparently, his 2 roommates had also developed a thing for her, and they were jealous that Ryan was the one who ended up in a relationship with her. At the time, Steph was still a virgin, and she waited several months before taking that step with Ryan. But once they crossed that line, things got intense quickly. They would be together multiple times a day. And she noticed something strange. Whenever the roommates were home, Ryan's energy would shift. He'd suddenly become more aggressive, louder, more performative. Almost like he wanted them to hear, to know. That summer, Steph and Ryan stayed back on campus for summer classes while the rest of the roommates went home. One night, after they'd been intimate, Ryan went to shower. Steph was still lying in bed when she realized his computer was on and still connected to a game chat with his friends. The mic was on. They had heard everything. Later that night, after Ryan fell asleep, curiosity got the best of her. She looked through his phone. What she found was a group chat with the roommates. A week earlier, Ryan had sent them a video of her being intimate with him. And just the night before, he'd sent a photo of her chest, right after a particularly private moment. The comments from his friends were intense, objectifying, and very explicit. It took her a few days to confront him. When she did, he apologized. He told her he just loved showing her off, said it was only ever between him and his 2 best friends, that no one else had seen anything. He promised to stop if it made her uncomfortable. Steph wasn't necessarily upset about him being proud of her. What bothered her was the secrecy. After a long conversation, they came to an agreement. He could share photos occasionally, but only if she approved them first. They didn't show her face, and he had to let her know what he sent. Things calmed down after that. Fast forward to the next school year. One night, after a few drinks, Ryan asked Steph if she'd ever thought about being with more than one guy. She didn't want to seem too eager, so she said no, even though deep down the idea did intrigue her. Ryan admitted it was a fantasy of his. She didn't shut it down. She just said she'd consider it if the right situation ever came up. About a month later, it was one of Ryan's friends' birthdays. Let's call him James. The night before, Ryan brought up a wild idea. What if Steph surprised James with a little birthday experience? At first, she was shocked that he'd even suggest it, but she was also a little curious. James was attractive. After some back and forth, Steph suggested they could keep things simple, just some shared attention. Nothing too far. Ryan agreed, excited even. The next night, after celebrating at a club, the 3 of them ended up back at the house. Everyone else had either gone home or fallen asleep. Steph excused herself to the bathroom, then returned, wearing only lingerie. She walked straight over to Ryan, dropped to her knees, and began showing her appreciation in a way that left no questions about her intentions. James looked stunned, but Ryan gestured for him to come closer. Steph turned to him next, and without saying a word, gave him the same attention. The energy changed quickly. There was no awkwardness, just heat. They eventually moved to the bedroom, where things continued. Ryan and James took turns. Steph admitted later that it was overwhelming, but in the best way. She felt powerful, seen, desired. Afterward, they showered and smoked a bit. James went to his room. Steph, still buzzing, turned to Ryan and jokingly said, "Should I just go see if James is up for round 2? She meant it as a tease, but Ryan didn't take it well. He got upset, really upset. The next morning, she apologized. He accepted it, but the energy between the 3 of them shifted. Ryan told her he didn't want her alone with James anymore. And from that point on, James always seemed a little awkward around her, like Ryan had said something to draw a line. Steph and Ryan didn't last much longer. They broke up a few months later. But the story doesn't end there. After graduation, Steph moved back into her parents' house, and one day matched with James on a dating app. They reconnected. What started as casual flirting turned into a 3-month friends with benefits situation. They'd meet up for workouts, then sneak off together to a quiet spot near a warehouse where they could have some privacy. Story 11. This happened somewhere around 2016 or 2017. I was in my early 40s, and she was in her early 60s. Technically, she was family, through marriage, and while that might sound strange, things between us had already crossed certain lines by then. We hadn't slept together, not in the full sense, but the dynamic had shifted months earlier. Things had slowly escalated, playful touches, lingering glances, moments of intimacy when no one else was around. By this point, we kissed regularly, touched more than we probably should, and occasionally found ourselves alone with temptation hanging in the air. That particular Saturday morning, she came by to go shopping with my wife. But plans changed. My wife had to cover a shift until noon, and the kids were out, sleepovers and weekend trips. So when she arrived at the house, it was just the two of us. She wasn't expecting that. Neither was I. But the moment we made eye contact, we both understood what the day had offered us. We ended up downstairs in the finished basement. It was quiet, dim, and far from the rest of the house. We didn't speak much. We didn't need to. She sat down on the couch, and I knelt in front of her. There was a clear shift, unspoken but deeply understood. I moved closer, and she hesitated for a second, murmuring something that caught me off guard. Something about timing. Something about still carrying the presence of someone else, someone she lived with, someone she had just been with. There was a moment of pause, and then I leaned in anyway. What followed was intense. Not just physically, but emotionally. I gave her my full attention, reading every breath, every muscle twitch, every shift in her voice. She responded like she always did, small, sharp gasps, little tremors that only she seemed to have. It was a rhythm we'd learned together over time. I stayed focused on her, keeping my hands on her hips, letting her guide the pace even as I moved boldly. I lost myself in it. So much, so that I didn't even realize how far gone I was until I felt the tension release in my body. Quiet. Sudden. Controlled. She looked at me afterward, eyes wide, breath shallow. A mix of disbelief and something else, something unspoken. She didn't say much except that she couldn't believe I had done that. Her tone was half reproach, half wonder. The moment passed like a storm. We cleaned up, talked for a while about nothing. I left a little later to go pick up the kids.